Start with big news from Romania. Is it about to join the global swing to the hard right, as it's been described? Romanian voters will head to the polls 3 times over the coming weeks to elect a new president and parliament. The hard right candidate George Simion of the far right AUR party are currently polling second, and he's been pegged as one to watch ahead of the first vote tomorrow. Victor Jack has been reporting on the election for Politico Europe and joins me now from Brussels. Victor, hello.
Hi, Henry.
Hi, we've had a series of pretty significant elections this year. We'll get some more next year, of course, with Germany. But why has this particular candidate, George Simion, become the one to watch?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I mean, essentially, his party, the Alliance for the Union of Romanians, rose to prominence during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's drawn controversy in the past for calling the mandatory teaching of the Holocaust in Romanian schools a minor detail. Simion himself is a sort of a charismatic populist, a former marketing director who rose to fame agitating for the union of Romania and Moldova, something that's got him actually banned from Moldova and banned from visiting Ukraine. Now, he's essentially polling second behind the current prime minister, the social democrat, Marcel Ciolacu. And it seems as if he does get into the second round of the presidential elections, the first round is taking place on Sunday, then that could have quite big implications for Romania's stance as a NATO ally and as an EU ally. And as you say, it would be emblematic of this broader surge and lurch to the hard right across Western democracies.
And that lurch has been fueled by concerns, of course, about the cost of living, but also about migration from non-European countries. So what are the key fault lines here? What are people campaigning on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a bit of a bizarre election in Romania so far. I mean, even though the stakes are quite high for the country at the moment, I mean, there's a security crisis in Romania, given that, the Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine is raging at its border. It has this yawning public deficit, has an economic outlook which really doesn't look great. It's one of the highest inflations in the EU. Despite that, the campaign has been focused pretty much more on personalities and mudslinging and scandals between the different candidates. So, we have Ciolacu, the prime minister, who's been accused of taking luxury flights that were expensed in a way that perhaps wasn't above board. And Simion has been accused of meeting with Russian spies in the past, charges he's vehemently denied. And the prime minister actually also had to deny after media rumors as well. So it's been a bit of a weird election in terms of actual policy or campaigning issues.
And with some of the elections and some political scenarios in European countries, particularly of the old East, Russia has been accused of meddling. What about this time round?
Yeah, so this time around, there's been some accusations of Russian troll farms and bot farm operations online. But it has to be said that Romania is quite different politically, sociologically, historically from some of the neighboring countries as well. Obviously, it's not a Slavic nation. It was never part of the Soviet Union. And so most candidates have said that, at least including the hard right candidate Simion, that they are against the war in Ukraine, that they labeled Putin a war criminal, but perhaps the nuances come out in how they would respond to the war. So Simion has essentially been the core candidate who has said he will suspend military aid to Ukraine if elected. And that's also put into questions his commitment a little bit to NATO as well. He's also a staunch supporter of President Trump and has called for Trump to orchestrate a deal as fast as possible, including a ceasefire, even if that means territorial concessions for Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. And when Romania joined the EU in that swathe of countries, it was 2004, then 2007. You remember the enlargement, and they had a huge exodus of people to the richer western parts of Europe. What's happened in the interim? How positive has Romania's membership of the EU been? How much have they had when it comes to EU funding? How helpful has it been to their economy?
Well, I think it's largely been quite helpful. I mean, growth has been quite strong, and Romania has always, unlike Hungary and Slovakia, that obviously have a more populist leaders which are anti-EU in power. Romania has sort of been the non-problem child in the region, let's say, when it comes to the EU, has always played by the rules. But this now could fundamentally be the biggest break since its accession to the EU, if Simion does come first in both this presidential election, the first round, and in the second round in a couple of weeks' time, which has to be said is not something that analysts are expecting, but polls are quite unreliable in Romania. And if he does get into the second round with a current prime minister who's very unpopular, then ultimately all bets are off and a major upset is not totally off the cards.
Yeah, and when it comes to Romania's defence, where do we stand with this? Because, of course, there is pressure on European countries, both inside and outside NATO, to scale up their defence spending 2.5%, 3%, perhaps beyond. Look at Poland, 4%.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's facing more pressures than most because I mean, really, the conflict is happening right at its border, and it obviously has other pressures to deal with Moldova, neighboring country, which is also applying for EU accession on its border as well, which is also suffering a very difficult political situation as well. So I think in terms of defense, it would like the EU to play a stronger role. I mean, it's still going to be a reliable NATO partner, I think, whatever happens. But yeah, I mean, perhaps the biggest defense debate in the country recently, it was the fact that some shrapnel from the war in Ukraine landed inside Romania, and the Romanian government and parliament realized that there were no laws actually passed so far that would allow them to shoot down drones or shrapnel that were coming into their territory. So that's also been a topic of discussion that perhaps is now going to be changed as well.
All right, Victor, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio. That's Victor Jack, who has been reporting on the Romanian election for Politico Europe, joining me from Brussels.
Și către noi, domnul premier.
Come in, please come in. You're very welcome. It's very good to see you. It's very, very good. Thank you so much. Please. But let me start by extending a very warm welcome. It is to me. So thank you very much indeed. Huge that we've already strengthened today with the defence treaty. So lots to discuss. Yes.